Hey there, fellow classic comic collectors. As always, I'm Scott Harris King, and today I have a very special episode all about cosplaying and how I made my Wonder Woman costume and my experiences cosplaying as Wonder Woman at conventions in the area. Before I get to that, speaking of conventions, I've just got a little announcement. I'm going to be participating in an online convention next weekend. It's called the Stay at Home Con 2, I think. They did one earlier. Since all the conventions have basically been canceled due to the pandemic, they're setting up these virtual conventions, which are websites where they have all the artist alley. So we will have all the different creators with their comics and links to their comics. And people have various live events on their different channels so that you can talk to them like you would if you're at a convention, that sort of thing. So as part of that, next Sunday, that's Sunday, June 16, maybe, I don't actually know what day of the week it is right now, but anyway, next Sunday at 10 a.m., I'm going to be doing my first live feed. It's going to run about 45 minutes or so. I'm still trying to figure out the technology. I have no idea how it's going to work or really what I'm going to talk about. I will be talking some about my comic, the Crime Busters that I make. I'll also have some back issues here. I can talk about collecting and reading comics. And basically, what I talk about is going to depend on you guys, whoever shows up. If you have any questions, you can ask me. I'll have the chat going so I can answer any questions about either my creative process or just comics in general. If you want to know who would win in a fight, if Hulk's fighting Thor, I can explain to you why it's obviously Thor. Whatever comes up, I'll be doing that. That's next Sunday at 10 a.m. We'll see how that goes, assuming I can get the technology to work. So that's something to look forward to. I'm excited to do that. It'll be my first convention of the year since the pandemic, so I have no idea how it's going to go, but it should be an interesting experience. Speaking of interesting experiences, you probably noticed there in the intro that I sometimes cosplay as Wonder Woman. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that and about cosplay in general. And then I'm going to show you my costume and just explain how I put it together and that sort of thing. So cosplay, it's something that's really big these days. It's something I just now almost launched into a big discussion of history of cosplay. I'm not going to do that, but even though cosplay has in the past been really big, when I was growing up going to conventions in the late 80s and in the 90s, I don't remember really seeing any cosplay. It's not really until the last 15 years or so that I remember seeing a lot of people coming out, and now, of course, it's a really big part of the convention experience. But because it wasn't really part of what I grew up with as part of my convention experience, even though I've always loved doing things like Halloween, it never really occurred to me to do cosplay. This is where my wife comes in. On one of our very first dates, we went to a convention. It wasn't a comic convention. It was a science fiction convention in Boston called Aresia. And my wife, that time, she wasn't even my girlfriend. It was like our third date, so we were just getting to know each other. But she really enjoys cosplay and making costumes and wearing costumes. So she wanted to cosplay, and so I was like, sure, why not? So I put together the absolute lamest cosplay costume of all time. It was basically a Captain America hoodie where the hood forms his face mask. And then I got a little Captain America shield that's actually a frisbee. And then I rigged it up so I could hold it on my hand like a shield, and that was it. But she made this really, really great looking Thor costume. And so she was cosplaying as Thor. This was before the Jane Foster Thor thing, so Thor was still Thor. And I went as Captain America, and we had this great time at the convention, and we loved just sitting there and watching all the cosplayers go by. But one thing that struck us, and then we had a long conversation about that day, was the what they call the gender flipping of the cosplay. Basically, what we were seeing was the men at the convention were all dressed as male characters. The women at the convention were also dressed as male characters. Now, there were some women that were dressed as female characters as well, But we were seeing all of these women that were dressed as Deadpool and Iron Man and Thor, like my wife, and Captain America, Batman, all any character you can think of. There was a gender flipped cosplay variant where the women were dressing as these male characters, but there were no men that were dressed as female characters. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. We discussed it quite a bit, and some of it has to do with the lack of popular and unique female comic book heroines. I say both popular and unique because a lot of the ones that are most popular are spun off from male characters. So, like, if I wanted to do a cosplay as Supergirl or Batgirl, for instance, it would be very difficult for me as a man to do that because people would assume that I'm dressed as Batman or Superman. And so, same with, like, say, She-Hulk. It would be very difficult for me to dress as She-Hulk. But the broader issue is just the idea that it's acceptable for to aspire to be a male hero. Like, women are sort of taught by society that the men are the heroes, and that's something to aspire to. But as boys and as men, historically, we haven't really been taught that being a woman is something to aspire to. So the idea of dressing up as a character and becoming a character, you know, for women that want to do, like, I don't want to say a power fantasy, but want to become these figures that they admire. It's okay for women to admire men and want to become men, but the reverse is just historically hasn't really been the case. If you when I was growing up is a little bit of a different time, in the 70s and 80s, but you were looked at as like a sissy, and it was looked down on. It was an insult for a boy to be called a girl. It's an insult for a man to be called a woman. So you just were taught not that wasn't something that you wanted to aspire to. So anyway, at this convention, just watching the cosplayers and talking about cosplay, and we had this long discussion about this, and I came away from that thinking to myself, that I wanted to do something about it. And because I was thinking about it, and I was like, Wonder Woman is one of my favorite characters, and I think she's a great character to aspire to. I think she's much more of an aspirational hero than, say, Batman. I don't want to be Batman. I don't want to think like Batman. I certainly don't want to act like Batman. But Wonder Woman, her ideals, I think, are something she's a true hero that you can aspire to be. And the other thing with Wonder Woman is there are ways to do a Wonder Woman costume that do not come off as a joke. It's another problem with some of the characters and their costumes being so sexualized, but also so feminized, that you run the risk as a man trying to cosplay a female character. In a lot of those cases, you run the risk of making it seem like a joke. If you like Google men, cosplaying as Wonder Woman, you will find some that are serious costumes. But when I did it, when I was doing my research for this costume, the first things that came up were fat bearded men like me, and they were wearing the classic Wonder Woman costumes, so like the bikini outfit, and it was clearly supposed to be a joke. It's like, haha, fat guy in a bikini. That's not what I want to do here. And with a lot of characters, female characters, it's very hard to come up with a twist on the costume where it's easily identified, the character that you're trying to portray, but that you can pull off without it seeming like you're making fun of the character, right? Wonder Woman, though, is a character that has had enough costumes that can be sort of gender neutral, that I thought she was a perfect sort of candidate just across the board. And specifically, she's got the battle armor. Now, this was taking place before the movie came out, but the first images, I think, of the movie were coming out around the time that we were out on this date. But she has that battle armor, the sort of the Greek or Roman sort of inspired gladiator outfit. And so that's something I thought, well, with a sort of a gladiator type skirt that I could pull off and do a version of that costume that would still be easily identified as Wonder Woman, but would be clear that I'm respecting the character and not doing this as some sort of gag, right? So the first thing I did is I went online and I did some research, and I did find someone that had done a costume very similar to this. I contacted him through Tumblr, I think. It's the only time I've ever used Tumblr, just to ask a couple questions about it. And so let me show you the costume. I'll show you exactly what I did to make the costume. The costume now, at this point, it's almost 4 years old. I've worn it a number of times and it's suffered some damage. It's actually missing one piece, and I haven't been able to fully repair it. So it's seen better days. I'm going to have some I've got some photos that I think I've probably been showing at this point, putting on screen of back when it was complete. But I'll show you the costume now, and I'll just go over real quick how I did it. It's the first time I've ever made a costume, so it was sort of a learning experience for me, but it actually wasn't that hard. And so let's take a look at that. Okay, here's the costume. I've got it laid out on the floor, and this is a costume. It's basically a gladiator costume. It's a one piece. You can see down here. Let me move this with my toe. This brown is the original color. Originally, the entire thing was brown. It came with the little shield things on the shoulder pieces. But other than that, it was basically just a brown one piece. The skirt is actually part of it. It's all one piece that you pull over. This is like a sheer under skirt that you wear. And so this came as one piece. And I added the Wonder Woman logos here in the middle and at the waist. I also added the stars here. I put the stars on the metal piece there, and then I also had to paint the whole thing. So I'll just go and show you in a little bit closer detail. Now, this metal shoulder piece here is what I'm missing. On the other side, it popped off at some point and I've lost it. Hopefully I can find it and re-glue it back on. I ordered from an online source. It was probably like a Michaels or something. It was a pack of these felt stars. Then I painted the stars red and I put one on each of the shoulder pieces. For the chest piece, this is foam. It's actually 2 layers of foam that I glued together. I think it's too hard to see that. I used, I traced the image out in the foam, cut it with a knife, and then I basically scored with a knife through the top layer. That's why I did it on 2 layers, so that way you get the actual W's. So the top layer is on top of the bottom, and I was able to score through 1 layer, get that there. And then I used gold spray paint on the whole thing. I used Gorilla Glue, which is like a super strong super glue, and glued that to the outfit. Before I did that, I painted the whole thing red as red paint, not spray paint. I applied it with a brush. So I painted the whole thing, glued on the thing. Same with the waist piece. You can see some of the here, let me get in close. You can see it's because the waist is where I'm bending a lot because I'm fat. There's a lot of cracking. I've tried to fix that. It's also led to the corners popping up here and here and here, and also the paint rubbing off, and I've tried to make some repairs, but not very successfully. I re-glued it down, but basically as soon as I wear it again, it pops back up. And then, again, the stars were white to begin with, so I didn't have to do anything here. I just painted the bottom part of the skirt blue, and glued each of these stars on using the Gorilla Glue. Once that was all done, the next thing I did was over here. You can see I've got the lasso. I took just a piece of foam and basically glued it together to form this little holster thing. This again is from a craft store. It was Joann's or Michael's or something. It's just like 3.5 or 4 feet of this metallic rope, and then I just looped it through here and tied it shut. So all told, I mean, the materials for this cost me, I think the gladiator costume was probably $30. With the stars and the rope and the paint, we're probably looking at $45 or so. That just left the last and most important, in some ways, pieces here. These I bought online. They're metal. So here's the tiara. It's metal. It's like it's not a very heavy metal, but so it came like this, already done, as advertised as a Wonder Woman's tiara. There's a lot of different versions of these you can get. I got a set of the bracers. I got ones, in the comics, her bracers have changed several times. They don't usually have a red star, but I thought it matched the tiara really well, like you see here. So it matches the tiara. So I decided to do that. Now, after wearing it the first time, or trying it on a little bit, they were uncomfortable, but also kind of loose. So what I did was I took a very thin layer of foam, and I glued it inside here. I was much more comfortable. It does get a little bit sweaty. Also, with the tiara, I want to show that the back of the tiara, it's adjustable. It has several different sizes. So the tiara was like $25. The bracers are about $20. So all told, I think I spent somewhere between $80 and $100 on the making the costume. And it didn't take that long. It was a few hours work, just basically painting, gluing, and then carving out the logos. So just a couple more things. Usually I wear a red shirt under this, and similarly I have a pair of blue shorts where the color of the blue is very similar to the skirt. Obviously it doesn't look quite right with this blue t-shirt, but I have actually a red Wonder Woman shirt that's almost the same shade as this. So I typically will wear that underneath this. Obviously you can see here where this is now missing the piece. I put on probably 30 pounds since I made this. So it's quite snug, but it does still somehow fit, just barely. Now, that's pretty much the whole costume. I just wear shoes. I haven't made like, I forget what they're called, but the van braces to protect the legs. I could make some of those. But honestly, I'm not too concerned with what my feet look like when I'm dressed in the costume. I want to make sure my feet are comfortable when I'm walking around the convention all day, so I don't really do that. My experiences wearing this have been very positive. If there's anything that I'm known for now in the convention scene in the Boston area, I'm the guy that dresses as Wonder Woman. I have worn this to a number of shows, and people remember me. So that's cool. I still haven't seen many other men dressed as female characters, so that is something that hasn't really taken off. I've seen one or two, but it's very, very rare to see that. And it's a conversation my wife and I have whenever we're thinking about cosplaying or talking about doing new costumes. I haven't made any costumes since this. I have a couple other people I cosplay as, but they're much more simple costumes. I do a Crime Buster from Boy Comics. I'm a huge fan of Crime Buster. That's very easy because his outfit just looks like clothes. But I made a Crime Buster costume as well. But she has this great idea about making Halloween costumes for boys that are female heroes. Designing them in a way that boys again, where they're designed so that it's obvious you're not, making fun of it. As a child, the children don't necessarily have the these taught preconceptions that we do, and so there's lots of boys who have female heroines or heroes, and but in my day anyway, that was kind of trained out of you as a boy. And so my wife has this great idea of making costumes for boys so they can to go to Halloween dressed as Wonder Woman or as Princess Leia and that sort of thing. And she's worked on it a little bit, but with the licensing rights, it's almost impossible as an independent creator to do that. It's something where the big companies like Disney have to take that initiative. So hopefully someone out there is listening and that sort of thing will change. But I enjoy cosplaying. For me, it's just a fun way to sort of express my love of the characters. It's fun to dress up, in these costumes, and my wife loves doing it. And in a small way, I hope that by dressing as a female hero, some of the people that see me and wonder what I'm doing will think about it. The one thing that still kind of drives me crazy is, in a very minor way, is when I go to the conventions, the people really struggle to figure out what to call me. So nobody's like, hey, it's Wonder Woman. They're all like, it's Wonder Man, it's Wonder Guy, it's Wonder King, it's Wonder Boy. And I'm like, no, no, no. It's Wonder Woman. I'm dressed as Wonder Woman. You know what I mean? Like, if I was a woman dressed as Batman, for instance, yeah, it's possible that you might call me Batgirl because of that character. But like, maybe that's a bad example. But if I'm a woman dressed as Captain America, um, when people are going to see me and they're going to be like, oh, it's Captain America. They're not going to be like, it's Ms. America. It's America Woman. No, because they know the character. But for some reason, since I'm dressed as Wonder Woman, yeah, I constantly am getting called Wonder Man in particular. And I'm like, Wonder Man's a totally different character, and I wouldn't dress as him. Maybe that Christmas tree outfit with the giant tubes on its back. I don't know. But anyway, so that's it. That's just a little look at the Wonder Woman cosplay. I do have some ideas for some other characters that I want to do. Again, it's fine line. I've got to figure out a way, characters who work where as a man I can wear it and it's both obvious who I am, but it doesn't look like I'm being silly. The one costume that I think would be perfect that I really want to do is Big Barda. Again, it's kind of an armored costume. It's very distinctive looking, and I'm a huge fan of Big Barda. So there's certain elements of that costume that are much more difficult to put together than Wonder Woman. So I feel like it's so far it's just escaped my skill level. I haven't had the guts to try it. But anyway, that's it. So thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you have any comments or if you want to see more stuff about cosplay. And thanks for watching. I've got a subscribe button here. And again, I'll see you all next time.